Okay everyone, so today we're going to be unboxing a PlayStation 3 from eBay, but not just any PS3. This PlayStation 3 was actually part of a supercomputer from the US Air Force. And that's not even a lie, but before we crack into this thing, let me give a quick shout out to Mr. Mario 2011 on YouTube. If it weren't for his video on this, I would have never found out about it, and then got the link to the eBay auction and bought one myself. So go check out his channel. He's got a lot of cool stuff on there. He does much different stuff than I do, and he gets a lot more in-depth with this kind of thing, but of course, this is PlayStation, so as much as I hate kind of doing the same thing, like, you have to buy something like this, right? This is a part of PlayStation 3 history. So back in 2011, the US Air Force bought 1,760 PlayStation 3s and clustered them together for a supercomputer, because when you put a bunch of PS3s together, they were actually quite capably used to for computational power. And at that time, when the US Air Force did that, it was, I believe, the 33rd largest supercomputer in the world at that time. 500 trillion floating point operations that they got out of 1,700 PlayStation 3s, which is crazy. And so this auction, ooh, this is a little messy. This is, I'm gonna get all over my room. All right, this auction was only the PlayStation 3. It was, of course, a fat model, and again, back in 2010. It's running on a pretty old firmware update. It does not come with the hard drive controller or anything like that, but it does have a lot of stickers and whatnot on it, kind of telling us a little history about it, about where it was located in the cluster for maintenance and whatnot. And this really is kind of a big deal, because that was like a huge story back in the days, that, you know, these things were actually super capable. That's why programs like Folding at Home were available on the PlayStation 3, because it was really good at doing things like that. And the eBay auction was even more fascinating, because the guy in the auction even says this was from a government surplus. He bought 80 of them, and he just put them on eBay for like $50. And so, like, all in, you're getting a PlayStation 3 with an extremely old firmware. And to be honest, I was more interested in that than anything else. But oh my God, here we go. This is awesome. I'm in love with this thing already. Wow, it's got a lot of oh geez. Transit was not nice to this thing, let me tell you. Alright, I'm gonna have to vacuum later, no doubt about that. Oh, Melissa's here. She doesn't want to come out. It's funny, because whenever I'm setting up for a video, she is all over the place, but then when I start filming, now she doesn't want to come out anymore. I know you guys love Melissa, but I don't know, she's been really shy lately. She doesn't want to come out. Melissa being my cat, so if you're not familiar. Okay, I gotta clean this thing off. Holy Hold on. Give me a second here. Okay, my floor looks like absolute hell now, but we got it. The PlayStation 3 that was used in the US Air Force. So cool, man. And so this thing was probably on all the time. It was an absolute workhorse, running Linux more or less. And once it was not deemed, the whole cluster, I guess, at one point was deemed just not nearly as efficient, or there were cheaper alternatives at that point, so the Condor cluster was taken down. And yeah, all the hard drives were removed, and well, I guess that's how they got offloaded them, a government surplus sale. And so some of the stickers that we have on here, pretty interesting stuff. So CPU, PlayStation 3, Linux workstation, on this little sticker right down here. This one up front, 121. So this, I believe, signified where in the cluster it was located, just for easy maintenance. So there was like an entire rack system, right? And so 121, this might have been the shelf, and this was the actual unit number. I would have to imagine that's how they labeled that. And then in the front we have a certificate of system hard drive disposition. That means they removed the hard drive, the system has been inspected, and any hard drives have been removed or sanitized. And then there's the serial number of the console. I don't mind not blocking any of this out. Serial number of the console, model number is just PlayStation 3, IPMS number. We've got a signature here, certification date 3/17/2016. Interesting. Then we got a little attached to system cut here. It's probably just another sheet of stickers cut here. Paste it on. It's good to go. So now the fun part, right? So we can actually, because there is no hard drive supplied, so we'll check that real quick. Obviously, we don't got one. Nothing in there. So what we can do is actually we can still stick a hard drive in here. Any standard 2.5-inch laptop hard drive, but we need to specifically load up firmware 2.52. If we load up anything further than that, then the PlayStation 3 is officially beyond that firmware, and we kind of just soured it there. So we're going to get 2.52, load this up, and check out that firmware. Now, one thing you may have noticed about this PlayStation 3 is that when they got rid of the hard drive, they also got rid of the disk tray that houses the hard drive, because the actual connectors are kind of centered in the middle of the back of the unit. But the thing is, you don't really need that. So you can see I'm still putting the hard drive, just make sure the connectors are lined up, and the hard drive will kind of, well, it'll still connect, but it won't be flush. It'll actually be bent down a little bit, but you're not going to shake this thing around or go crazy with it, so you can still put it in there just fine, or you can buy a disc tray from eBay. And hey, look at that. Now a Wild Melissa has shown up, finally. She's been, like, not wanting to come out for the videos lately, but now when I'm doing some of this B-roll stuff is when she decides, oh, you know what, I got to investigate what's going on. And as you can see, she's having a good time blocking my shot and just generally being a nuisance. But God, I love her. Anyway, let's fire this thing up. I want you to pay close attention to the left. There you go. There was still some styrofoam into the fan of the PlayStation 3, the vents really, and the fan kicked in and blew it out. So that was, I found that to be pretty humorous. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to leave that in here. And so there's a lot of good resources online to find firmware 2.52. There's still a lot of good communities and whatnot going around the PlayStation 3. There's a good hacking community, mod community, and stuff. So, you know, when you boot up the system, it's going to say that the system software cannot be run correctly. It's going to ask for, you know, the latest firmware that it's up to or what it recognizes, right? And so it's telling us that, you know, when I was last being used, I was on firmware 2.52. I need to see that. So you plug in the USB drive, checking, and this is a typical annoying process that you have to do, but the system partition to hard disk drive will be formatted. That's fine. Honestly, I don't even remember what hard drive I put into it now. I think it was 500 gigabytes. At this point, I've just got like 5 or 6 HDDs floating around, and I just kind of swap them interchangeably when I have to for some of these videos where I have to reboot PlayStation systems. But as you can see, we're installing the firmware. Doesn't take all that long at all. Actually, it took maybe about 20 minutes or so in total, but here we go. We're starting into the boot up process, and we're still on a standard def, so here's where we change over to the max resolution of 1080p, and looks all well and good, right? You start that up, we get our nice little, ooh, there we go, yeah, that music playing, that's always some good stuff there. But oh my god, that old black XMB with the information board in the top right corner. So you have no idea how, like, nostalgic this is for me, and it's something as simple as just seeing that black XMB. Here you can see the install other OS, so we can definitely do that at some point, and we totally will, just not for this video. But the thing is, at one point or another, when Sony updated the firmware of PS3, they got rid of the black XMB, so they only made it a flat color of like blue, red, green, yellow, something super bright. And I don't know why they did that. I really missed that a lot. As you can see, now I'm starting up Resistance 3, or no, excuse me, not Resistance 3, Resistance Fall of Man. And it's honestly, dude, this is such a throwback. And it really is something as simple as the black XMB. And then you got the old Mata font. That's actually the name of that official font, is Mata, M-A-T-A, if you ever want to look up that font. But everyone calls it the Spider-Man font, understandably, because it was used in the Spider-Man movies, and that's why. And that thing is, everyone was like super negative about that. They didn't like that font back then, but I thought it actually looked kind of futuristic looking. Now when I see that font, though, I think more about Sheets. If you remember, well, it's not like they're gone now, but Sheets, the gas stations, they use that font as well, I'm pretty sure, or something that's extremely close. But look at this, man. We're starting up Resistance Fall of Man. Really, I mean, what else can I say? It really is the nostalgic thing, where I remember back in 2006, I didn't have any money to buy any games, so I just downloaded a bunch of demos. But my Uncle Chris, he also got a PS3 on launch day miraculously, and he got Resistance, so I was able to play his copy. And so that was like the one full game I had for the longest time, actually. So for a few weeks, I just had Resistance Fall of Man, and then a bunch of demos, which I sat and waited patiently for. This PlayStation 3 also has in-game XMB, so 2.52 was up to a point where we still had the trophy support. We had the information board. We could still use the XMB. And so speaking of which, what we're going to do in another video coming up is actually do a deep dive in a comparison of this firmware and then the latest firmware on PlayStation 3, and really discuss the history of firmwares on PS3, because it actually is pretty interesting when you dive into what Sony prioritized in terms of bringing what features to PS3 first. So stay tuned for that. Otherwise, that's pretty much it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. I thoroughly hope you enjoyed it. It was really fun doing this. And as always, please subscribe for the best PlayStation news, reviews, and updates here on YouTube. Follow me on Twitter at Mystic Ryan for my gaming shenanigans. And I will see you all in my next video. You take it easy.